The Connect community is stoked to be here. Honored to be on stage with all these killers on stage up here. But first and foremost, big shout out to Hydro Depot for hosting us. Vince, Danny, and team, thank you guys so much for the hospitality. Round of applause for our host.
Thank you, Vince.
Such a beautiful store. Thank you for letting us do what we do here. This is the culture. So we appreciate you supporting the movement. Thank you guys. Oh, and just want to say a huge shout out to all of our sponsors as well. The Connect wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our sponsors to help get us around the world, to educate, to level up with you guys. My name's Sergio Picazo. I'm the founder of the Connect community, co-founder of PowrHouse up here with Kevin Crouch. And all we're doing is leveling up with everybody. We're here to cultivate curiosity. We're here to ask questions. We have the power of curiosity. We want to learn from you guys. We're looking at the industry. What are you doing to separate yourself in the marketplace? This is the top 10%, the small things that you got to do in the grow to separate yourself from the market. Not a lot of people understand a lot of these micro details. Well, we're here to dive into it.
No.
The market is thin. It's compressing. A lot of people can't sustain this. If you're not growing yield with good quality, good luck. We're here to see what's cracking. We're here to talk about the strategies, the solutions, about a lot of the things, a lot of the journeys that have gotten us to here. If you're still in business today in 2025, you're doing something right. And it's only going to sustain that way if you continue the evolution and to continue to level up together. So without further ado, let's start with some introductions, please, right down here.
How's everyone doing out there? If you don't know me, Chocolate, own Hytek, the refinery Detroit. Good to see everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Yes. I love Michigan, man. I'm a big fan of Michigan. I'm Lance from First Smoke of the Day. I'm also Blackleaf. Happy to be here. Absolutely love Michigan, if I didn't already say that.
What's up, everyone? I'm Kevin Crouch. I operate PowrHouse. It's a 310 light R&D facility. All 4 rooms are different. We trial products, lights, everything, test it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
What's up, y'all? I'm Justin. I'm director of cultivation at Doghouse, Michigan. I've been there for about 3 years. I'm just excited to have the ability to really push as hard as I can and do some cool things and increase our smokability. That's about it.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? I'm Seth. I'm one of the owners of Growing Pains. Thank you, Dylan. Been growing in the caregiver industry for about 14 years now. We've been in Metric for 5 years. Like I said, we're up here to try to figure out what good weed is, try to give you guys our take on everything, and appreciate everybody coming out.
Let's go. Hey, everybody. My name's Dylan. I'm with Favrd. We're a small brand out of Mount Morris. I've been cultivating 20 plus years, most of which caregiver market. Favrd is coming up on 2 years. So we're stoked to build our small team, keep it craft, and keep pushing. So good to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a while.
Round of applause, please, for our panelists. All right, guys. So to recap why we're here to level up. We're here to gain perspective. We're here to raise the bar. We are here to try to educate. We're here to try to learn from each other. Most importantly, I heard it down here, smokability. What are you doing to increase the smokability? Because this is the shit that matters, that last 10%. So why do we want to continue the evolution? The science of smokability, a lot of the things that we've been working on, it's fascinating stuff. You know, we're not just crop steering in the root zone, we're now crop steering in post-production, focusing on water activity, tissue type, grind volume, all these awesome things, post-production solutions from Grove bags and that awesome lung technology to really preserve the terps and quality. Love that. We're doing something different here, and that's what we're trying to elevate on. Lance, you see so many farms, you talk to so many different people. What are you seeing from a smokability standpoint? What are those little things that you're starting to notice?
Yeah, man. Yo. You hear me? Yo. Yeah, one of the things I'm seeing between commonalities is like dialing in your formula. So whether it's raw salts, whether it's Athena, as we just saw them crush the market, whether we've seen drip, I'm smoking some Seed Junkie right now. Obviously, everyone's using, whether it's HGV, whether it's this or some Synganic approach, dial in that formula. And we're seeing that all over the market because we're not seeing one nutrient company win or one style win. We're starting to see everybody tailoring their formula to fit. And then now the smokability, right? The first thing we're looking for is flavor transfer. And if you have hollow smoke, that's where you lose right off rip. And I think a lot of that comes from having just a very baseline feeding program. It's hard to say, like, what are people doing wrong when, like, you know that you've just gone this way. And it's like, yeah, I don't know why it burns white, but I didn't spray late. I didn't do raw salts and nothing else. I did kind of, and so you start to go through drybacks. You weren't running 6.0 EC from, week one bloom. It's just, you really got to dial in your process. And I can just harp on that like the way chocolate grows is going to be just a smidge different than me. And then as we go down, each person's going to have a different recipe, but I guarantee they've figured out how to dial that recipe in. And I feel like that's really where you guys need to figure that out as growers, right? It's like, this is where you guys become growers. This is where everyone in here gets to saddle up and go, you know what? Like, I believe in my recipe or my program. Let me match the market. They want white ash. Let me figure out why I'm not getting it instead of battling why it's not something. Let me figure out why flavor transfer needs to be there. I just think really dial in your process, and spraying late is one of the worst things I've seen people do. I'll touch on that again. If you want your product not to have the flavor, if you want issues, anytime I've had to spray late, obviously you're trying to go after an issue or you're having a problem. That's when you're really going to twist it up. And yes, there's always going to be, I sprayed late and it still burned white and tasted good. Okay, cool. You hit a weird little niche that worked out. But I just think dialing in your process is so key because every single person in here is going to be a little bit different. But who are we to say that it's not smoking? Because, like, I'm telling you, I've been handed 15 to 20 different batches at this point. Michigan's figuring it the fuck out. It is like really, I'm smoking guys from Cali stuff, and I'm like, oh damn, they even got it figured out here, which is hard to do. So it's not only guys from Michigan who have been out here, in the soil figuring it out. It's also guys being able to come out here and link up with crews who understand it. Before it was like talking to the wall, white ash, flavor transfer, smokability, and people would be like, bro, 4,400 a pound, 448, So yeah, figure out your process, just like everybody, man. You got this. We know you do.
I couldn't agree more, man. Well said, specifically because there's so many people that just have a subjective approach to it. But now you cannot manage without measurement. What are we doing to manage the repeatability of this? Seth, I'm looking at you down here, man, because you guys just took home the proper cup. Big shout out. That was a huge win. And people were shocked that you did this with rock wool and just a straight salt synthetic blend. So talk a little bit about the process too, man, because everybody's willing to know.
Yeah, so it's just salts, to be clear. We run Pro line straight across, nothing special, anything like that. I've talked about this recently. I think we're always trying to look for one thing, and it's never one thing. It's always a combination of things that stack on top of each other day after day. I think I was talking to somebody here about this today, just the differences of something as small as our mechanical systems and when they fire and the dead bands on those will make a huge difference, across the span of 90 days. So I don't think you can ever really point to one thing. It's just, check. Sorry about that. It's the compounding effect over 90 days, and it's all the small nuanced details. So, I think we all went down rabbit holes, over the last 10, 15, 20 years about, what produces good smoke, what doesn't. We kind of pinned it on certain nutrient companies or certain media or whatever, and I don't think it's that. I think it's we've all got a little bit different recipe on this thing at the end of the day. But it's finishing mechanics. It's how you're ramping up. I think I'm a big believer you've got to ramp everything up and down together. It's kind of a harmonious effect, I guess you could say. So yeah, it's not one thing. That's I know I've said that. That's the message, though.
Let's talk a little bit about post-processing. I think this is where a lot of people miss. They can do a great job cultivating and then post-processing comes around and you just completely cook your terps, or you just don't get enough moisture out of the room. Please touch a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I think moisture is a huge factor. We were fortunate to win with the proper cup. And, one thing I'll say about that batch of honey banana was that was pretty much straight out of the dry room, right? So I know we went up against other people that, you saw the batches were from a month ago or 2 months ago or whatever. So I think being able to preserve the moisture content and water activity is super important. I think we all smoke a lot of weed here. We all know at this point that fresh weed is better than 60-day cure or 90-day cure or any of that kind of old talk. Certainly think there's a window, to all this stuff. What's that? Yeah. From a temperature and humidity process, we took what we do from the Jungle Boys way back, 60 and 60, 14 days, low and slow. If you're not walking into that dry room and feeling like it's really cold, you're probably doing things a little bit too fast. And I think that's where you're seeing some of the volatility in terps and everything. So, I know chocolate does things even a little bit different than we do, but these are like subtle changes, I think any of us that have ever dried back in the day at 75 degrees and 50%, it's like you saw what happened to the weed real quick. So yeah, just keeping the weed, I think Dylan and these guys do a great job of it. Every time I get his weed, it's like that soft, pillowy, spongy, that you can tell when you break it down exactly how that weed's going to smoke.
Thank you for that. And Dylan, touch a little bit about that. How do you get that touch, that spongy effect on the flower?
Moisture is a big part of that. You want to be 60-60, cold and cool. That flower definitely wants to be burnt down. That's a process in itself. I see a lot of people just kind of rush post-processing a lot. That's something that if you want to preserve that flower and its integrity, you have to slow down and put as much attention into that process as you do flowering. I've seen a lot of good batches of flower disintegrate with bad post-harvest process, and vice versa. So I've seen batches come out that weren't the best coming out of a room that were handled properly and kept the integrity and, were great. So moisture content's huge. Burping our bags down. We like to bring stuff into the room, we do turkey bag first, always burp in a turkey bag, and then I go and do like a Ziploc bag. And then we finish out the cure in there. And we usually get about 28 days from the time our product is chopped to when it gets on the shelf. 28 days, sorry. From our time our product is chopped till it's on the shelf. That's kind of the time frame that we're after, because that farm to table is super important as far as, we can only stay good for so long, especially on a dispensary shelf, so.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is getting from the cure room to the dispensary and giving that optimal experience. Because we're going to the dry room, we're picking off buds, right? That's just it that we're smoking. How do we get that experience to the consumer? And you touched on moisture content. How about water activity? Are you guys measuring water activity at all?
I don't. Never have had to. I don't need to do that.
How are you measuring moisture content?
In the flower? Yeah. I don't measure moisture content in the flower. We do when we throw it in for testing. I don't even know what ours comes back with, to be honest. I'd have to ask Chris out there. What's our water content come back at? I do everything by feel and touch as far as like getting the flower down. So.
How about yourself, Justin?
Yeah, so feel and touch is a big thing. That's exactly how I started. I think the big thing for me for post-processing is finding someone who's obsessed with having that perfect moisture content. I've got somebody who is honestly, he's on my ass all day, every day. Like, is this too wet? Is this too dry? And on a scalability perspective, that's the most important thing that you can do is find a team and train a team to be as obsessed with the final product as you are, and give them the tools to make those changes. And that's been the biggest thing for me. So we did start measuring water activity. We're dialing in our ranges. More trichome dense strains, thanks to Sergio and Kevin's advice. It's a little bit heavier on the water activity, whereas as a more oily, less trichome dense strain is going to be a little bit less. And that's kind of what we're starting to play with and dial in, and that's been the big thing that we're focused on.
How about yourself, Kev?
So we test water activity, and it was more of a function of being repeatable. So I operated a large commercial facility, and having that touch is hard to teach. You know, like you said, you gotta have somebody that's passionate like you are. So when you operate 20 employees plus, to have somebody go in the dry room and know your touch is difficult. So it's easier to have a number that you can replicate. And water activity is that number for me. So, you know, anybody can go in and take a bud as long as they have the SOP on how to break it down into the cup. They can test it, and, you know, it's a little bit more repeatable on a scale, a large scale. So we go that route, and certain cultivars do perform a little bit better, a little wetter and a little drier. So it just takes some fine tuning to figure that out.
And that's the fun part we're going through right now, is fine tuning what genetics require certain water activity range for higher buck down versus lower buck down water activities. And then when you trim, right? When you actually package after that process. And again, every genetic is unique, and we're trying to find the tissue type and trying to identify the high trichome density, the leaf to calyx ratio, and how that transfers over to the smokability, right? We are measuring this quantitatively. We got forms for our team, right? Our team gets a lot of free flower on every harvest. So we're QCing ourselves. We're making sure that the batches are coming out that we appreciate, and that we're making the adjustments in the grow based on that.
Yeah, we do a lot of tweaking too. So we need to have that data from our team. You know, we're an R&D facility, so we're constantly adjusting things. So they may not know what I did, but I did something different. So I need to know how that smokes. And so having that data is super valuable for me to understand how that transfers to the smokability.
No doubt. And I'm going to pass the mic to Chocolate on this one next.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse. I know everyone talked about water activity. I'll touch on a few different things. Something we strive for at Hytek is when we're moving our drying weed into a cure room or trim room, make sure all our conditions are the same so it's not taking in or releasing water. Another big thing we focus on is type of strain. A greasier strain can hang longer, will go longer, can hold up longer in a dry room. Drier candies want to come out earlier, get handled first, get trimmed, get into their bin, get into their turkey or their Grove bag or Mighty Lock, whatever you're using. And we've noticed the biggest thing is every strain's different with drying. There's some similarities, and that's up to the team and the post-production workers to understand that and work with the grow team to accomplish all the strains to get through that process to get to a shelf are being handled at, it could be a day too, you run something like our Devil's Candy, a day too long in a dry room, you'll kill the terp and flavor by about half. But if you catch it right, and you trim it and you get it locked down and curing, you'll be all right. So that's just something we've learned the last year. And on top of that, it's just really each room being the same. So nothing's given or taken moisture, and just the plant's being happy when it's just curing.
I'm really glad that you touched on production timelines, because there's so many events that happen in a grow that puts a delay in the trim process, right? That happens all the time. And that's something where, again, I love talking about solutions and the grow bag technology. It's like, you walk into a grocery store and you see that prepackaged salad. It's preserving the quality of that salad because it's got a lung, it's exhausting everything out. So utilizing like a 27-gallon tote liner with a Grove, because that's going to preserve whatever, the maturation, the process is at that point, and the water activity that you want to hold. So you just snap the tote lid back on, and then you trim it when you're ready. And that's something that we actually started to see is like, shit, we're not losing that day or that vital day where the terps might just be crushed. So really cool process. Lance, how about yourself, man? What are you thinking?
I mean, one of my biggest things was, are you hanging full plant? Are you bucking off water leaves, or are you breaking everything to 18-inch pieces? So I always went the extra route of breaking everything down, taking off all water leaves. That was just always what we did. And then I let that cocoon happen so that the next person touching it is touching the stem, trimming off the outside, and then that bud is going directly into a C vault for me. I always use C vaults. I know everyone's got opinions on that. That's why I say dial in your process. But we go C vaults because I know I could almost drop kick that thing and it's not going to act like what it is in a turkey bag. And so I'm able to carry that. We would take that straight to the dispensary. So they clipped it off the bud, put it in the C vault. I'm burping it. I'm watching it. Again, I like where you're going with it because it's teachable. And that's something, it's very difficult, where I hate when we get up here, I read the comments, and people are like, give us the tech. Don't just talk nonsense about figure it out. And I get that. So like I run Botanicare. I finish with Cool Bloom powder. I've run that for 23 years. Yes, I've run HGV. Yes, I've run Advanced. Yes, I've run House and Garden. We did side-by-sides in Colorado. Cam I was close with. I worked with a lot of great people over the years, 23 years. And so I love that process that I've figured out that if I run Botanicare the way I do it, if I finish it with Cool Bloom powder, if I don't spray late, if I do what I do best, I don't do crazy drybacks. I do the full water through. I've tried to play that game. I just was always chasing my tail. And then I'd revert back to what just full water through, dry down, full water through, whether we ramp up 2 to 3 times through the process. Like for me, it was almost going back to the basics and staying with that. I always had product where people would be like, bro, why is this smoking so good? You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I can chase my tail over here, which I would always do. It's like chasing seeds. We always do that. But at the same time, as soon as I went back to my basics, I just had so much success. And so I bring everything down. So even when we scaled up to 120 lights, I would break everything down into 18 to 22 inch pieces. I mean, I'm down for 24s. It's just make everything that. And then I would go in there. And again, my process never got bigger than myself. So I never had to teach that to someone to dumb it down McDonald's style and say, here's the bumpers on the bowling alley, bowl down the middle. Please God, don't hit the outsides. I was always there to be like, today, take those tomorrow. You know, like most of us do. So it is harder to teach that even on camera to talk about that because you're like, well, I was there and I just know. You've put 20 years in or 25 or 30 and you're like, yeah, I can see it. I can be like, hey, that plant over there, what's going on with that one? Oh, that's not even the same strain. And they're like, wait, what? And you know, it's that type of shit where you're like, how do you teach that? But it is difficult. I have my process. I just explained it, and I've had very much success pulling water leaves, having everything even dry down. We used to take racks before, obviously, dry flower. We would take where you would hang clothes, flip them upside down, attach them to the ceiling so you could walk underneath them. And we would have a 20-foot room where it was basically like, like a full rack, like you would hang clothes. And I mean, we were doing like 20 pounds on each one. So it was very successful. And that's why I say dial in your process because it's so different for each grower. And yes, you do see the commonalities with success, but then everyone has their little bit of touch, which makes them special.
Now, there's so many tactics for ripening, right? I'm very curious. I always love to see how people taper down the nitrogen towards the end, right? Because if you're not taking out the nitrogen towards the end now, like, what are you doing to ripen? So if I can just start with you guys, maybe Dylan, start off with your ripening strategy, man, because I love this topic. Love to get your perspective.
Yeah, so I'd say 2 to 3 weeks out is when we really start to, you know, it depends on the strain, it depends on the room, sometimes even it depends on a lot of things, but usually 2 to 3 weeks out we start to taper down, both environmental and nutrient feed. We're going down the roller coaster, you know, essentially we're getting ready to bury everything and everything gets tapered down together. CO2, light, what else? Feed EC, everything comes down, humidity comes down, temperature comes down. And we slowly taper down. So I'm usually at about 3 C still, straight salts, mid bulk, and then we'll go down to 2. And sometimes we'll go down to 1.5. We follow that all the way out. We'll start tapering our ratios of bloom to core. We'll eventually swap out the fades. Sometimes we won't. It all depends on the strain. Strains are everything. All those ladies don't like the same feed. They do not like the same feed. So that's for sure. So depending on the strain, we'll taper down. We'll change ratios. Sometimes we'll take out the nitrogen completely. And we chop, I would say about 50% saturated. So we'll get a full watering in. I'm very picky on that. I want that plant dried back about 25 to 30% from full saturation when we chop. So, yeah.
What about you, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me? I think Dylan nailed it there for the most part. We're very similar in that regard. You know, we've tinkered around going as low as like 1.0 at the end and
really trying to hit like less runoff, so we're not giving any sort of vegetative cues with excessive runoff. We've played with it. We've found 2.0 to be the sweet spot for us. You know, to his point, you've got to bring everything up and everything down together. And as you do that and the room gets colder, the metabolic rate and how that plant is processing water and nutrients starts to diminish. So, you know, for us from an irrigation strategy, you know, we'll start shaving off P2s, extending that P3, that dry back more. You know, we've noticed over the course of time, if you dry back too much at the end, it almost seems like the glands, the resin glands are starting to, I don't want to say dry out, but like you can just visually see, you know, the weed doesn't have that like wet look to it. So you got to be careful with that, especially with us. We're in rock wool. So, you know, anybody that grows in rock wool, you know, it goes hydrophobic really quickly. So it's like, you know, a sponge that sits out in the kitchen sink that, you know, when you go to put the water back in it, it just repels all the water. So yeah, you know, we start at 3.5, go to 3.0, finish the last 3 weeks, 2.0, nothing special. We've played a little bit. Dylan and I are close friends. So, you know, I'm always calling him, seeing what he's doing. Same with Bill. And for us, you know, we keep that 60-40 ratio with the fade. We've played a little bit recently with the 70-30. We were seeing a little bit of excessive burning, and he and I talked a few weeks ago about it, and, you know, he already kind of had a bead on it that he thought it was excessive magnesium. We're starting to see a little bit of tip burn, more than I'd like to see, starting to recede back towards the bud and everything. And so, yeah, we've got a couple rounds in at the 70-30. It looks promising, but inconclusive for us at this point.
Did you feel that the plant was just a little depleted when you went that low?
Yeah, I'd say definitely.
Kev, actually very curious about this. We were talking about this morning. Please touch on that aspect.
Yeah. So generally, I follow the same kind of ideas you guys do. I use United nutrients, and with that, I don't have fade. I blend my own with calcium chloride. So I've been able to kind of tweak that ratio, and I've gone all over the place with it. I've done full nitrogen removal for 2 weeks, and just kind of, we're an R&D facility, so I'm just messing around with everything. And that slow drawdown tends to be what does the best, in a commercial sense with a lot of strains. So typically our double stacks can have up to 20 strains in there. So I'm kind of going with the masses on what responds the best with that. And I can see that with that many strains. And so I usually do that. And I also, we do the Sanganic program. So I incorporate a lot of organics, and I alter those organics the last 4 weeks. And I help that alteration adjust my substrate EC. So I'm going to kind of modulate week by week when what is included in those organics and how much of the base nutrients are in there, and almost treating it kind of like a substrate flush, but not to the extent that you're flushing out all your EC. It's more of, a substrate reset, where I'm trying to go for a goal on whatever week 42, I'm going to adjust that ratio with these organics in there on that week. And feel like it kind of gets you that extra 10%, you can kill it with salts and you can get crazy yields, crazy frost, but there's so much genetic variability that when you have this many genetics, that might not unlock this terpene with this genetic, and it might not unlock this terpene with that genetic. So when you kind of throw organics in there and the biostimulants and microbial packs, you can get that consistency across all genetics. You're kind of unlocking those terpenes that wouldn't have been unlocked without them. And so for me, I can kind of get that with that many strains and see what the full flavor of those strains are. So.
And Justin, you're trialing something a little bit differently too. Touch on what you were recently experimenting with.
Yeah, so right now I'm focusing on the low taper fade. I lower my environmentals, I taper my EC, and I watch my plants fade. That's the method right now. And I've been using all base 3-2-1 jacks, same ratios, lower it down, taper it down, right? And with that, and my next thing that I want to start playing with, I'm going to keep my calcium nitrate in there. I'm going to switch to the jacks 0, 12, 26. So that way I have no nitrogen in my part A. And then I want to increase my calcium using green aminos. And then beyond that, I want to start experimenting with dissolved oxygen. I've dissolved oxygen all throughout my building at the same rate right now. I want to figure out how different levels of dissolved oxygen can scrub those salts out of the pot and increase the ability for the plant to ripen. So that's my next thing that I want to play with. Figure out exactly that correct rate of oxygen that is scrubbing all of those salts out of my pots, allowing me to ripen at a correct rate, and move forward that way. So that's my next strategy and my current one. Low taper fade.
I think there's so much to unpack with dissolved oxygen and the extreme benefits of what's happening, not just from the root zone, but actually in your irrigation and actually what's happening with the breakdown of all those salts when you go into ripening. I mean, it's pretty slick stuff. And you can now start to inject gases through nanobubbles. Like, we're barely scratching the surface with this thing. So I think there's a lot to talk about. And I'm glad that you're going down that direct injection level, because this is still so new, right? Most people know about dissolved oxygen as just treating your source water with one particular solution and then the off gas once it gets to your dripper, right? It's hitting pumps, it's hitting turns. But when you have direct injection, you can control that right at the emitter level.
Yeah, so what I've seen is treating your source water is great. You get increased nutrient uptake, you get increased root health, you get increased decreased rooting times in clone, increased veg times, or increased veg, vigor. Vigor. Thank you, Seth. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of improvements on that, right? But with the direct injection, like you were saying, we have the ability to actually play with specific points of your flowering cycle and figure out exactly what it's doing at each point. You may not need as much at the beginning as you do during ripening. When you start adding organic inputs versus synthetic, I haven't found a limit yet with my synthetic. I've run 24 DO and it's been killer. But with an organic, it may be a little bit lower than that. So that's all the stuff we want to play around with and just kind of figure out exactly what is affecting our plants in which way.
And Lance had a great question. What industries are we seeing dissolved oxygen using this technology in, right?
What was that?
What other industries are we seeing utilizing dissolved oxygen?
Yeah, dissolved oxygen is used in mining. It's used to clean up nasty lakes. The super rich folks are throwing it on their stocked lakes, so they're treating their lakes with nanobubbles. They're throwing a bunch of bass in there. They're growing at a quicker rate than they would have. It's used all over the place, and it's used. And yeah, wastewater treatment plants. I mean, essentially that's what they're doing is they're putting a few drops of chlorine in our wastewater. They're filtering it through sediment, through carbon, all of that, and they're nanobubbling it, and that's what's returned to our tap water. And it's been an impressive thing to see, and it is very viable in agriculture, and it's been used in traditional agriculture longer than it has been in cannabis, and I'm excited to see where it goes in cannabis.
And managing that ORP strategy, right? Because you mentioned something very important about microbial life and how high your ORP should be. Well, we actually did do some trials not too long ago with Chirospace, and we found that operating with a lower ppm of DO from 12 to 16, right around that range, because normally we've been taught 18 to 22, 24 ppm is allowing the plant to have maximum uptake with that DO level if you're running synthetically.
Yeah.
Now, when we're running microbes in there, we actually found a higher CFU count with that lower range of ppms. So we actually doubled the amount of microbial proliferation in that lower 12 to 16 ppm range from what it was up top of that 18 to 24.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're running a sterile system, the 24 ppms, you're scrubbing everything out of your root zone. You're scrubbing everything out of your lines, out of your pot, everything. And so that's great when you're running fully synthetic, but when you're running organic, if you go too high, those little sonic booms that are created by those nanobubbles are scrubbing away your organics as well. And so you do find a negative effect on some organics.
For sure. And why is this important? Why are we diving into this right now specifically? Is because we're talking about quality. What is improving the smokability? Like, why are we doing these little tweaks and nuances with our water? Right. And I think there's something there. There's the correlation to the actual ripening process. There's the correlation to breaking down the salts and minerals in that block when you're going through senescence, right? Tapering down your EC, all that. But there's just so much. It's such a new technology that we're just getting exposure to right now. So thank you for sharing your experience with that, because I think that's something that we're going to continue to dive deep on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'll talk on ripening. I think we all understand, lowering certain parameters at the end or tapering, all that. Something that we really worked on at Hytek in the last 12 to 18 months is color in which you finish your weed. Purple weed notoriously just doesn't smoke like green weed, but unfortunately the street doesn't want green weed out here. So what we've tried to do is basically coat the outside of the bud in purple, but still leave the inner tissue green. When you go too purple, it doesn't seem to translate and coat the way green weed will of the same strain. Now we run HPS exclusively. I've noticed LED weed can be a little more green. There's other things with LEDs that kind of make the growing a little easier to grow. But with HPS, color's never been an issue, so we don't run fade. The Athena fade, we do run Athena, we do taper. But we have no problem getting color when we want it. We actually have to control it. So depending on strain, depends when we start certain parameters of the finish. So we don't go too dark at the end. It looks great. It's cool, easy to sell those bags. But if we're here talking about smokability, the green to purple ratio is a thing. And I'd love for people to hit our DM and tell me what they see, or what they've experienced with the green to purple on the same cultivar, for sure.
Lance, I want to get your thoughts on this purple, green.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, the darker you go, the hotter it burns. You can almost like taste how hot it's burning off the joint when it's that purple or dark black. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. DJ Short's flow, we used to manipulate that one in Colorado, and that thing would get black and taste phenomenal. But yeah, I love the dissolved oxygen. I love where we're going with this thing. It's constantly changing. And like everyone, again, a lot of people up here use Athena and having really good success, because I've smoked your flower. Thoroughly impressed, because for years we heard all the derogatory shit about it. And so I love when people are figuring it out. And that's kind of like when we talked, that we open this up, everybody up here has tweaked their system, especially this guy. Like listening to him talk and you guys with R&D, I'm just really impressed to be up here with these guys, because everyone on here is constantly pushing, even 20 years in, and then the next thing's going to be lighting. Some of the best flower I've been smoking in the past year has been mixed light. And I've had guys around me and guys that grow some of the strains we've bred or we've hunted or we collabed on. And every time I've had a batch that's just blown me away, we've asked some questions, right? Just like food or anything else. Wow, this is phenomenal. What's in this? What was this? And it's been mixed light. I'm seeing so many people just hit home runs with mixed light rooms. And then obviously everything we're hearing about on the stage. Does anybody else on here using mixed light, running either HPS with LED or some form of, mixing it up?
Yeah, we run.
I think that's,
Yeah, we run mixed light. I don't know, it's been probably but even before when we went into Favrd, that's been 2 years on mixed light. I'd probably say 3 to 4 years on mixed light overhead mostly. We still have some LED rooms. We still have some HPS rooms too. I do, because you have to. Certain strains still like certain things, but I love mixed light. It's the best of both worlds. But there's a lot to uncover there. Like, I don't want to give anybody any tips. Just try it out and figure it out, because there's so much to uncover there. You can cook cycles faster than you want. You can go way over the speed limit. You're essentially making a 900 horsepower engine. You know what I mean? And you can go as fast as you want.
And then you throw in some perpendicular favens in that mixture, and now you're really cooking. But no, I think this is a really important topic, because we're quality, right? What are some of those things that separate out? It's the mixed light, it's the blending, it's the homogenizing of these spectrums, especially when you start to add in some under canopy. And I know people are trying the vertical versus the perpendicular, and yes, we're seeing better quality overall with that setup. More light on the plants on all sides, you can't deny it. Just more PPFD on that plant, and it's doing something, right? But one of the things that Kev, you mentioned earlier this morning was specifically around, that process with mixed light and the leaf surface temperature, and how important LST is in this.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And so when you run the mixed light, like you said, you're going to uncover a lot. And the biggest thing is like, what lights are you mixing in there? What LEDs? Because not all LEDs perform. And that's probably your biggest factor in there, because your HPS is always going to have a higher leaf surface temp. And then what if you're mixing it with a 640 or 720, LED, you're going to have the ups and downs of PPFD, leaf surface temp, and then trying to get that all balanced together so you have an even canopy and you're not having HPS grown weed and LED grown weed. That's the biggest challenge.
You gotta have high ceilings. You gotta have high ceilings. You have to have high ceilings. You have to mix the spectrum. You can't be low on the plant. Do what he's saying or it don't work. You'll get some ugly looking inconsistent packs. Let's put it that way.
A lot of stress factors for sure. But
in a lot of the stuff we're talking about, we're talking about going really fast with a race car with most of the stuff on here. And that's why when we say figure out your process, I always go back to that, because with dissolved oxygen, mixed light, like, yeah, there are so many probabilities. Like people who are doing stacked, yeah, you can't, don't touch it. Just do what you're doing. And there's so many people this won't work for. But the best smoking batches that have been given to me from all the different growers, and I sit down with everybody, and then I don't just do that for like a living, like off podcast. I'm still hanging out with all different growers, smoking batches, talking about phenos. Like that's literally all I do. Nothing else. And so every batch, when we start to boil it down, and now we ask these guys right here, you know anything about mixed light? Yeah, everybody up here is utilizing it. It's something that's a commonality in the best smoking weed I've been given over the last 2 years. Every batch has been some form of mixed light that they've dialed in. And they're like, even my buddy who has a 1,000 lights up, 2 different grows. My partner in Washington has 1,000 lights as well. And the one room that's mixed light, we're always like, this is the mixed light room batch. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, well, flip the rest of the fucking facility, but it's not up to me. So, but it's like every batch we all know, like that's the one. So yeah, it's just something we want to touch on. I don't think a lot of people talk about is how prevalent it's becoming in every facility.
If I may, it's a scary thing. You're handing the keys to a Ferrari to somebody. I mean, with DO and with mixed light. I mean, especially with the far reds, you have the ability to fuck up everything. DO almost ruined my entire life, to be honest with you. I introduced DO into my grow, and now my clones are rooting 5 days earlier. My veg plants need a week less of veg time, and I don't know what the fuck to do. I got all these plants. I haven't cloned at the right times, and everything's a mess. And I had to figure out, like, all right, cool. Like, we got to drop our cloning time. We got to drop our veg times. We got to dial in our plant counts, and everything has to change immediately when you introduce something like that. Same thing with the far reds. You have the ability to herm things out if you do too much. It's scary if you're not able to read your plants. It's somebody who has the ability to walk into a room and hear the plants. Are they screaming at you or are they singing to you? And that's the big thing that sets people apart from each other. And that's what I focus on.
There's so many things that happen in the room, right? So the balancing of the spectrum, the addition of far red, the far red treatments that I'm seeing, the reduction of overall maturation time, the flavors that are coming out with these far red batches, like it's extremely impressive. So yes, I think when you start to talk about quality with using some of these strategies, you can actually run these genetics that are typically pushing 70 plus days and actually finish them in a commercial cycle, right? I think that's one of the more exciting things that I'm starting to see is some of these longer flowering varietals starting to come in and they can finish them in 9 and 8.5 weeks. Let's go. I'm ready for it.
I'd like to bring up flush because I know this is a thing that we talk about a lot and some people do, some people don't. Some people think it's bullshit. Some people live and die by it. Some people have it dialed for 3 weeks and some people do it for 5 days. And everyone does it in a different way. Some people are using freezing cold water. Some people don't give a fuck about the temp. As far as everyone on this stage, are you guys doing a flush? And then what medium are you in? Because that obviously plays a role in that.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on our process. We talked about this here recently. We don't flush. We flushed like everybody else probably in this room for a really long time. I think it was just one of those things we all took as like rule of thumb that we were all playing by. You know, it was a lot of conversations with my partner Tom and Chocolate down here all the time about like, you know, obviously what is making this weed good, but like maybe what is something we're taking to be true that's not true, or at least for us is not true. And for us, that was it, you know. So we don't flush. We feed all the way up till chop. Usually we're trying to stay right in that like 6 to 8 range EC wise in the substrate when we're chopping. We found when you get to like 8 to 10 in Rockwool, the smoke just doesn't smoke as clean. The flavor doesn't translate the same way. So, you know, we've gone as low as like 4 on it. Same thing. I feel like if you go too far the other way and you don't have enough, I guess, nutrient density, for a lack of a better term, in there, you're just not getting the same smoke. So I think really 6 is kind of that middle ground we like to stay at.
Do you find that you get a little bit more background noise on the smokability when you start to go lower in that?
Yeah, both ways. Both ways. Like I said, you get up near 10 EC, you're stacking that up too late and everything, not having enough runoff on everything. It's a little bit harsh, a little bit of that background noise. Same thing when you go to 4. So.
Oh, flush, no. Taper, we're in cocoa. We hand fill a 2-gallon pot with some cloud core. We taper. We find in cocoa a little lower, like a 4 to a 6 max. So we will run down to those 4s. It's given us the result we want at the end.
Taper down to what?
We taper down to a 4 or 5 EC. Okay. Oh, our feed EC 2. It just depends on the runoff you're trying to hit. We don't like to push a ton of runoff, as Seth says. Seeing some generative cues with the higher runoffs, and it's really just a combination of the plant metabolism with the room slowing down, mixed with what's going on in the color, the environment, and trying to hit a moving target every time. Yeah.
Low taper fade. I've said it once. I'm gonna say it again. To be honest with you, I do not flush. I lower my environmentals. I taper my EC down to about a 1.2, and that's kind of what I rock till the end. Jax is a little bit different in the sense that we run a lower EC for the most part all the way through. So a 1.2 is about my sweet spot from week 7-ish, 7.5-ish is when I start that.
Yeah, I don't flush either. So usually the last 10 days is my my flushing time frame, and I usually run at about a 1.5 EC through that. I do a like an organic kind of reset at that 10 days prior, and I might operate more like a 5 to 7 EC, and that prior to that, and I reset that down more to like a 4 to 5. And that's what that organic reset does. And then you cut your P2s, and then you're naturally going to kind of build it back up. So that reset allows me to build it back up without going too far above where I want to be.
No flush. No flush.
No flush.
Taper down. Taper down. Taper down.
Perfect. So pretty consistent across the board, guys. Like it's been an urban myth, right? Just flushing. No, we're the tapering down effect. Absolutely, you got to produce that nitrogen. You got to keep all the core elements in. You don't want to deplete the plant on the final stage, right? We're trying to chop down zombies. We want that plant health to be optimal when we are trying to put it through its end of life, because what happens in the dry room, it's still synthesizing. You got to make sure. That's why the whole organic approach in bringing in those trace minerals into the plant to increase the terpene diversity, make more languages. That's all they're doing. Terpenes are just multiple languages. The more terps we can create, the more languages. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So having that plant health and immunity built in from the early stage of life all the way through to taper down in that end of life strategy, absolutely. You can't just cut shit out. That's not the way.
So I have a question for Kevin here. I know you have the ability to adjust your DO to any point that you want with this direct injection. Have you played around yet with DO and ripening in different levels and different stages, and at what point that may or may not help increase that ripening. If you have to ripen for less amount of time, if you have to taper a little bit later, anything like that.
Not in regards to actual the tapering effect. I have not. No, we generally run it more for my purposes or more to keep the microbe colonies pretty high. So I have not pushed it out to a level that might might alter the finishing. But what I have done with DO is on my room reset. So after everything's been killed, I have the ability to go up higher, and those nanobubbles will help break out those salt, and the bursting of them.
What level?
So we're probably right around the 30 plus is where we would be at. We haven't got extensive testing. We actually just got the unit about a month ago. Okay. So haven't gone extensive testing. That's to be part of the plan here shortly. So, but yes, the room reset I think is a big asset, because if you're running PAA or any sort of chemicals in there and then you add that additional oxygen, you're really going to be cleaning out those lines.
So my favorite part of the conversation, Q&A. It's time to open up the conversation to the crowd, the audience. I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions. Don't be shy. We have Anthony over here with the microphone. Anybody have any questions for these panelists? So you're all absolutely crushed. So you're all, where's my mic? So there we go. We got a question over here, my man. Name and where you're from.
Hello? You don't want to be near. There you go. See, that's way better. My name is Manny. I'm with a company called Great Lakes Kush out of Lansing. My question for the panel. Yeah. My question for the panel is, with Favrd technology and under canopies, how have you guys seen it negatively affect the room with in regards to like ripening too fast and or yeah, that's it.
Can you hear me? We haven't seen a ton of negative effects, as long as you're just not silly and you're paying attention in your garden. I mean, obviously, if the flower sites get too close to the under canopy light, you're going to get bleach and everything. Same thing, those things, they run pretty cool. But like, again, if it's on the surface of it, you're going to see that just ugliness in the flower. As far as like the room goes with under canopies, I think people underestimate just how much mechanical, you need in addition with these under canopies. And I think a lot of us, when we were building our rooms, we built them with a little bit of a buffer. Maybe you needed 15 tons for a room, but you built it with 20, just because in week 9, you want to be able to do whatever you want to do. Same with dehumidification. So for us, it was a pretty seamless transition, just as far as being able to have enough AC already, having enough power for the room, having enough dehu for the room. So, that's the one downside I'd say, is obviously if you don't have enough dehumidification and you're trying to ripen out in those final stages, now that KPA is starting to get really low, right? You're starting to get back down to like a 1.0 because you're trying to run this room at 70 degrees or 68 degrees, in those final weeks, but you're hovering at 60% humidity at the nighttime, right? So again, that's one thing me and this dude are always talking about. He's calling me like, do you have any more dehumidifiers for sale? Because, at the end of it, yeah, if you want to hover around that 1.2, 1.4 KPA, ideally, you got to have a lot of dehumidification, or you better have a badass reheat system, right? So yeah, that's my take.
I couldn't agree more with that. Honestly, it's we went from having a ton of redundancy to having none, but just from the addition of under canopy lights. And now I'm boosting my infrastructure. It's fortunate that I was able to hit that perfect level when I added those under canopies, but now if anything goes wrong, then I have an issue. And so now it's a matter of adding more dehumidification, adding my air conditioners are fine, but it's mainly dehumidification. Those plants are transpiring more than they would have. So that's the biggest thing. I agree.
And that's a great question, specifically because not a lot of people are taking The moment of they're adding more plant biomass, what do I need to adjust, right? So dehumidification always, right? 6 pints per plant per day has always been kind of like that baseline. But now we're cranking over 100 grams a square foot, and we built our rooms for 60 grams a square foot. Okay, now what? Well, what happens when you don't have enough power? We tapped out that panel. What do? Are you going to adjust your plant count? Right? So a lot of farms are running, 12 plants light, 9 plants light. We're starting to convert everything pretty much to 7.5 plants a light.
Yeah, 7.5. It's exactly what you said. It's like, it was this trend of like LED crush, plant count went down, still crushing, but we had to. We couldn't, I can't get to 1.2 VPD. I wish I could. So I have to get creative with it.
More humidifiers.
Yeah, and recently I put a strain in a room that will finish about 10 days early, so that way I can pull out that strain and then raise up the VPD and pull that down. So like you said, you got to get creative with it if you only have so much.
Not everybody has the benefit of having a spaceship built for their first grow, right? A lot of us have adopted facilities. We've made the best with what we have. And so some of these creative strategies, especially when we're adding in tools to make the plant, right? What are we focusing on? Is it yield? No, yield's just a byproduct of the quality increase, what we're chasing, that smokability, the shit that not a lot of farms are going to be able to sustain in this market. Let's just be real. We're going through massive compression out in California right now. We're seeing it in real time. Pack prices are at an all-time low. And I'm glad that it's happening. There's too many players out there that are in this industry for the wrong reason. We're trying to stabilize. There's no middle ground. You're not gonna survive if you're middle ground. You're either boutique or you're a protique.
Amen.
Preach.
Amen. And I'd like to just go back to touching on what you said, man. That is such a clever move. And that's him just figuring his style out. Like, just like we'll keep going back to that. Everyone's a little bit different, but you having it like, yo, this finishes 10 days early, so I can chop this out of the room so I can finish properly on the rest is just a great figuring out process. And that's what everyone in here, that's why you're a grower. Figure it out, right?
Failure's not an option. It just isn't. That'll be the death of you in this industry.
I got a negative for you, Manny. As you know, the more lights, the more opportunity. Lights like to stay on at night. So the under canopy, make sure your connections are clean. Make sure you're replacing those RJ cables. They don't like to hold a lot of lights. So we pretty much we replace our RJ every harvest. It's a cheap Trollmaster piece. Just keeps everything running. But that I would say is watch your night cameras. Make sure there's not old Mr. Under Canopy running at night. Yeah. Hey, there you are. Yeah.
It's a great tip. And also don't forget about that dielectric grease in there too. That does help out.
That helps.
Yeah, great point, Chocolate. We've had that happen. Come into the room, an hour before lights are on, just checking things out, and it's a disco party in there. These things are going on and off, and yeah, we all know how that goes. It sucks. It can totally throw off a room. So yeah, good call, Chalk.
Great question, my friend. What else? What other questions? Do the panelists have any questions? Here we go.
Anyone got any good cuts for sale? Any good genetics out there? Let me know.
I got a question. Is there a Quester and Andon rep here? Because I got to talk to one of you two. Whoever's a Quester and Andon rep. Oh yeah. Well, I need to talk to somebody.
What questions do we have about anything? Go ahead, Kev.
I was just saying, there's got to be some questions out there.
All right. Well.
That's a good question right here. He said topped or on top. I think that plays into genetic plant density and how much ceiling height you have. If you're double stack, obviously we're topping. And then it plays into, how big are your tops getting on that genetic. Sometimes topping can control some late flower bud rot. If you get something that wants to get huge, top it, hopefully get a bunch of mediums. But from there, we've been experimenting. We prefer untopped with a lot of our genetics. But we'll go back. Like everyone on this panel talks about, it's a constant evolution. We throw under canopy in. It's going to change the way the plant morphs. So, I think it just comes down to genetic, and I don't know. What do you think, Dylan? You've messed with this a lot.
I mean, yeah, it's genetic for sure. I mean, don't top Skittles. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Don't top Rainbow Bells, or you'll be flowering with under canopies above and below.
Yeah.
For sure, genetic. Depending on how the canopy fills, depending on how that plant stretches, nodal spacing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, tear gas for us, we typically run it, topped or untopped. It grows great both ways. I got to watch her early on because she'll blow up and stretch 5 times her size. So if she gets just a day too long in veg, I'll have to top her to slow her down, right? But she can handle that. Some genetics cannot, and topping will ruin the canopy for me, depending on, again, genetic.
Yeah, I mean, same thing here. We do both. For the longest time, we topped everything. Anybody that's been to our grow or follows our pages, we came up in these 6-foot basements over in Jackson and shit. So it was like you had to top, you had to have a laser level canopy because your lights were at 5'6". You know what I mean? And you still needed that distance because we're running single-ended HBS. So we've gotten kind of away from topping most things at this point. We still do a lot of training and everything, trying to keep canopies even, so we're delivering light at an equal level. You're not having some stuff get 1200 PBFD and some stuff getting 800. So
on my end of things, I do not top a single thing in my entire building. I like to learn my genetics. I have certain strains that I clone 4 days earlier. I have strains that I clone 4 days later, and that's where I figure out how to get that laser level canopy with untopped plants. And sure, they're not, your top middle branch is going to be less than your axillary branches, but we spread the side branching, and then the distribution of light with under canopy, if your top lights are placed correctly, seems to be that perfect level where you can get quality and you can get an incredible yield off of it. So that's what I focus on is adjusting my cloning times. I clone this 3 days early, I clone that 3 days late, and that seems to get me to that level canopy that I want to see.
Yeah, so personally, I do top, and obviously strain specific. We'll always go back to that with every single thing we're talking about. But I see a green everything. So no matter, even obviously when you get to 500-600 lights and you're trying to explain sea of green and tie down tech and basically how to wrap this type of thing instead of tying down. But I've always been a big proponent that every single piece right here is oceanfront real estate. That's what you're paying for, right? The cost of this is oceanfront real estate. So I'm big into tying every plant straight to a trellis. We've always done. This is the way I was taught in 2002, and I've just scaled it up, and that's my process. The same with breaking down plants. But I tie everything down lateral. I go full lateral with my plants. It's way more work. I have to teach crazy amounts of people. But yeah, I still take this tedious process all the way up to, I've only had 120 lights. I've gone up and down in that set of that, but I've always done the same thing and literally trellised everything completely flat, flipped it to bloom, and then tied again 2 weeks after. And always, it was just the way I was taught. As soon as something raises up, tie it back down. As soon as something raises, and that's just the way I've had a lot of success with my plants in harvest numbers, running strains like Presidential Kush and these strains and hitting what I need to hit. And then at the same time, when I harvest, I have really good consistency in my bud size and structure. Every single bud across my trellis is about the same size. So when I'm putting my pounds together, people were always like, separate your smalls. And I'm like, what fucking smalls? We smoke those. That little thing right there, yeah, that gets rolled up. But like a lot of the big bags and all this smalls, I understand when you go all the way up with production, that changes. I'm all strain specific as well. I'm not going to top Skittles or Rainbow Belts, like, of course. But most of the time, yeah, I do top and I scrog everything, even to this day. And I got my little tech of how I do that. And I absolutely love that tech. I like bud sites. My whole thing is I need 4 to 5 bud sites per 4 square inch, you know, in the trellis. And if I have that, I know where I'm going with my numbers no matter what its strain I'm growing. So yeah, that's just my tech. And again, like if I had 1,000 lights, yeah, that would be a nightmare. So you have to figure out where you guys fit.
Yeah, for me, topping really comes down to the PPFD and veg. So, you know, if I'm a really low PPFD, like you have old lights or you just can't get the, you know, 500 to 600 PPFD, then topping is probably necessary because the apical dominance is just going to be fucking straight up. But if you have good veg and you're hitting 500 to 600 in veg, I absolutely do not top. And when they go into the flower room, obviously we have Favrd, so trellis comes in first, like before, you know, before the plants do. And then the next trellis, I'm doing exactly what you said. Every square has a plant in it. And then if I do have a genetic like a Magic Marker or Zushi or something like that, that's a 4X stretch, I'm using that trellis on day 1 of flower, day 7 of flower to manipulate it, and I'm super cropping it. I'm putting it under it, and that way the canopy, it slows down that canopy till the other strains in that row come up. And this is all on a double stack too. So, you know, 48-inch box, 46-inch box, it's just, you know, just manipulating that hormone in the plant to reallocate it to other parts of that light. And then you basically, I call it growing hedges. I like to grow hedges.
Hey guys, I'm Justin from Caked Up in Warren. I have 2-part questions actually. Talk a little bit, guys, for me on plant touching after topping or not topping. What do you do from the move to your last stages on plant touching, as well as other stresses from under canopy, right? So stressing the plant out, or, you know, darker branches, or, oh shit, poppers, like temperature change in that sense. What other stresses have you guys seen from under canopy on that?
For me, I prune pretty heavy around day 21-ish, somewhere in that range. New genetics, I start a little earlier for herm potential. I want to make sure that we get good eyes on it. So somewhere 19 to 24 is my first prune. My second prune is pretty light, and it's usually about 2 weeks before harvest. So day 44, you know, in that range. And that's a much lighter prune because my first one's pretty heavy. I don't really like to damage, like you said, touch points, and I don't want pruners' arms going in there and, you know, and just knocking things around. So as little as I can touch that towards the last 2 weeks of flower is better. It just preserves the flower a little bit better. And as far as under canopy, that first trellis is number 1. Like, you have to have that, otherwise you're going to have green clips. You're going to be clipping up buds. And I actually don't pull a single bud site. So I pull leaf, but I do absolutely no skirting with under canopy. And that's regardless of our checkerboard that runs at 60-inch plants, or it's my under canopy that runs at, you know, 38-inch plants. I just adjust the height of that under canopy to accommodate that. So, but absolutely no bud sites, and they're still heavy enough if you don't have trellis that those branches with the buds are just snapping. So it's not like, you know, they're small, they're still a bud.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's something that we've experimented a lot with here recently, and I know we took a lot of this kind of from chocolate down there at Hytek. You know, we talk all the time back and forth about what they're doing, comparing it to what we're doing. And we've started to try to skirt up, try to get, you know, a little bit better A's to B's ratio. We're pretty particular about, you know, how the packs look and the bud size that goes in the pack. You know, we really want to have smalls be truly smalls, you know, and we haven't seen the benefit of really skirting up, you know, aggressively like we have here recently. We've really just seen diminished yields, you know, so you're not seeing bigger colas or anything like that. We've seen, you know, as much as like a quarter to a half pound per light diminishment on the yield. So, you know, obviously it's great for all of us for plant maintenance. There's plenty of shit to do in these gardens to keep things clean and orderly and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's my 2 cents that I wouldn't clean anything up if you're running under canopies, just the leaves.
Yeah, I agree. That again goes back to genetics for sure. Some plants do way better, don't being touched at all. You know, if you want to talk about more stresses with the under canopies too, definitely be be wary when you click them on. Anywhere from, I know we used to go day 5. Some rooms we mess around and go till day 14. And when you click those on, be prepared for those plants to get very hungry. You're putting a lot more light on them. And so watch your runoff pH. Might have to bump your feed EC. Just be mindful after you turn those on. Be in your gardens, checking on your plants.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we see it not only from the feed EC and the substrate EC, but the water demand. You know, like you're clicking on P2s really quickly. You know, I think we're at, you know, we'll feed 2 hours after lights on. You know, that ramps up. The feeds go for about an hour and a half, and then we're on 4 P2s by day 14. You know, we're feeding up pretty much an hour before lights off. You know, so again, short P3, not a whole lot of time for that dry back, because by the time the lights come on, you get those 2 hours, they're ready to go.
Knowledge. I'm honored to actually be here listening to you guys right now, because I actually smoked a flower from a couple of you guys. It's fire. I just wanted to personally know, from a connoisseur standpoint, do you feel like it matters whether a grower smokes or not? Oh, that was the first portion of my question was, do you feel like it matters whether a grower smokes or not? And the second portion of my question is, growing in Michigan compared to growing in Cali, do you feel like, what's the major difficulty that you feel like a grower should know automatically from growing in Cali and growing in Michigan?
I'll go first. So yes, it matters. Fuck yeah, it matters. And 2, Michigan to Cali, humidity. Nighttime humidity especially.
Yeah, Dylan nailed it. Yeah, definitely matters as far as growers smoking. I don't care how much you smoke. I just need to know that you're trying your product. I mean, we all know people in the industry that, you know, in the past we probably had a ton of respect for, and as things have scaled up, you can see the diminishment of their flower quality. You know, you can tell they're not QC in the batches. As far as environment goes, you know, and like running these mechanical systems and everything, you know, like you said, humidity from here to Cali to Colorado, it's all different. So you got to know how to make those adjustments on the fly with what the outdoors is doing relative to your systems indoors.
I think the big point of improvement with smoking versus not smoking comes with your post production. When you're pulling something off the dry room racks and you smoke it and it's incredible, and then you see after post production when it's in a bag and it sucks, and then that is that point of improvement that you know you have to tackle. That's incredibly important, and you won't know that unless you've ripped it off the dry room rack and then you've smoked it after it's been put in a bag that's getting sent to a dispensary. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is knowing exactly what your weed tastes like coming off of the like right off of your dry versus when it's in the store. And you have a lot of abilities to change those things in that process. So that's the big thing for me.
Do you trust a skinny chef?
Never, ever.
Yo, what's up? Oh, yo, Ray, thanks for coming out, man. Good to see you. I think I'll start with the biggest difference between California and Michigan. They got the DCC, we got the CRA. We can't do anything here without getting in trouble. Out there, they seem to like to do whatever they want. I don't know. Yeah, shooting baskets all day. But no, for real, what was the other question? Fuck.
It doesn't matter if you smoke.
Oh, yeah, Ray, you already know. You already knew coming up here the answer to that. Stop. No, for
You know, I learned from my personal experience just being on the metric side for the last 2 years, you know, I came in from the black market. We do a lot of smoking. And, you know, when I got on the metric side, it's a lot of masters of the business that don't do a lot of smoking. So I figure, you know, you got to filter through a lot of this stuff and get to the guys that are really smoking, that have the know-how. And, you know, a lot of guys are self-proclaimed in the business. They grow a couple plants and then they feel like, you know, they're Jack Herrera. But, you know, it's all in the eye of the beholder, and the person who's smoking the flower gets to decide in the end. But I personally do feel like if you're not smoking, then I don't really want to talk to you about weed.
I feel that, Ray. I think the biggest thing is you being honest with yourself as a grower, your team. Is it smoking? Is it not? I think everyone needs to look around this room, and everyone harvests weed. We all were our own bosses at one point in the black markets or whatever. And oh yeah, this batch is fire. This is it. And no one really knew anything. When you get into this legal, you start throwing bags and bows out there into the market, the stores. You put your nuts out there, bro. You got to smoke. So if you guys can't be honest and say what's smoking or not, that's something we've really had to, I think, come to in Michigan and understand what a coat was, a flavor coat, flavor in general. I'll be honest, I've gone through the whole gauntlet, progressing from a brand new grower to where we are today. And there was a point in time where you had to be honest with yourself because we're here talking about the 1% of weed, we're here to talk about flavor, not just, it looks good, it smells good. That's 85, 90% of our sales at Dispos every day is that $100 ounce that looks good, smells okay, smokes like shit. And that's fine. That's going to get the person high. That's great. But we're all here for a little more. So to get there, you got to be honest with what you're smoking. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it not? And then you can go from there.
Amen.
Well said,
Amen.
Sean.
Alex with Gringo. Since we're all talking about under canopy, I was curious about airflow, just kind of supplementing that underneath canopy, and then what direction are you kind of going? Are you guys going for air, racetrack, or are you guys going for kind of a loop?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can run max fans or whatever under your canopies, on your tables and everything. We just we've got 6 Schaefers, 20-inch Schaefers in the room. We've got 2 going in one direction on the outsides. We've got 2 going the other direction on the insides. And then we've got floor fans, That's what we've found to work so far. I'm sure there's better, more efficient ways, but that's what we do.
Yeah, go Kev.
Yeah, I would agree. Pretty much the same thing. I think the under canopy puts off a little heat. LEDs generally are nowhere near as HBS, but you have those buds that are inches away. So anyway, you can bring that heat off of those buds. So having a polyducting underneath them or on the lower canopy is preferred if you can do it and it fits into your grow.
Stepping back a couple steps, he just reminded me with the extra little bit of heat that comes off that under canopy, something we've really noticed is we got rid of a lot of microclimates. It's not cool under our plants any longer. And that added heat seems to really, the plant does like it. We do skirt a little higher than most with under canopy. We're not actually going for the most yield, just a good efficient yield. So I think our airflow, we get good airflow over the top. We just did add in some wall fans in some places to kind of take care of some middles of the room that were seeming to be a little stagnant. But with the lights, I think the mechanical equipment kicks on a little more, moves a lot of air. But yeah, something we've really noticed with under canopy is that extra heat kind of homogenizes the temperature of the room. There's no more cold spots under the plant, I guess. I think everyone could speak on that here for a second.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole plant is equal VP, has equal VPD. You don't have a hot upper third and a cold lower. It just kind of universifies the internal plant VPD.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I actually talked to Tim from Favrd. Alex, I see you out there. We've talked about this too. But, when we're measuring VPD, we're always measuring it from like canopy level and everything. But, especially as we're using these under canopies and you've got leaves and flower sites lower, you really need to be thinking of like the full 360 degree around the plant VPD, and like, I think when you think of it that way, you start to realize there is a lot of congestion, and that starts to now again play back into your plant count and like planting density, how much space you're giving everything. So you're able to get that mixture fully around the plant.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's where, I think Mango just dropped the new fan that's got EC control, so it can variably speed control up. And that's kind of why we're going towards that newer methodology, not newer, but just less plant count, like giving the plant more space. Absolutely. Yes. The VPD is homogenizing with more heat. That's great. But, there are some strategies for sure that we're still going to be playing around with that EC fan that Mango just dropped. So that was a really good question. I think that's something that not a lot of people think about specifically when they're getting more plant mass in their rooms is what about the VPD down below? Great question.
Yeah. Good. Sensor placement. So not, beyond the obvious of what it's, like Arroyo, Grow Link, like, are you going more so for the happiest plant in the room? What represents the row best, like overall? Or like, what do you make your choice?
Yeah, I think, for us, you have to kind of cater to the plant that's leading the pack. If you try to cater to the one that's at the back of the pack, the runts of the pack, obviously the one that's leading the pack is going to get not enough water, not enough runoff, So, I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people overlook is when you're taking your clones, making sure you have even clones from size of clone, caliper of clone, just so from an irrigation standpoint, you can be consistent with everything. If you can get these things looking like a carbon copy of one another, that becomes less of a factor, So for us, we're always taking 35% excess clones and everything, and then just taking the best from the pack. And yeah, that's just less of an issue for us.
Yeah, Seth, that's a good point. Touching on your veg health coming in, the more uniform, the stronger the clone batch, the easier it is to control. We kind of take the Goldilocks method, I'd say. We don't go too strong, not too weak, just enough. Yeah.
Take more clones. That's my piece of advice for that. Take more clones, throw away more clones, pick your even clones, and you're going to be in a good spot for that.
We have another question back here.
Check. There we go. Okay, so I'm looking at about like 150 years of combined grow experience on this stage, right? With all of the technology that's out there and all of the newfangled methodologies out there, what's the one thing that you guys still take, like the one professional grower trick from your old school days?
Checking runoff. Yeah, like my head guy over there, Ty, he and I, we've been growing together for like 12, 13 years. And, we talk about this all the time. I think when Arroyo and GrowLink and everybody came in, we're all trying to figure out this crop steering, and we're trying a lot of different things, with vegetative steering and generative steering. And yeah, I mean, really, I think, sorry, what was the question?
Old school tactic that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. A little bit high. Yeah, just checking runoff, Actually, Ramsey made a post about this the other day. But, we try to keep everything in line. We try to make sure we're using water-soluble nutrients. So, what we've noticed over the course of time, it's kind of like the poor man's Arroyo is what we call it. It's like as you're starting to stack in the medium and you're seeing that come off in your runoff, you're going to start to notice your pH drop. And then the same thing goes as you start to pour too much runoff off and you're not building enough, you're going to start to see that runoff go up, that pH go up. So, for us, we're always kind of steering back with the runoff. One thing I can say about using these precision platforms is like, don't get too caught up in like specific numbers. Like if you're trying to dry back and you're drying back to a target of 30% volumetric water capacity, it's okay if when they're ready to water, it's 33%, it's 34%. Like I think plants love schedules. They love, they've got a circadian rhythm just like we do. You'll be amazed at how much better everything goes, and you're waking up at the same time and you're going to bed at the same time. It's the same thing for them. So check your runoff.
My thoughts on that is look at your fucking plants. To be honest with you, that's like the biggest thing. I mean, if you're drying back to a 20% and your plant is stoked about it, and then you leave it like that. Like that's it. Like there's just because somebody else isn't going past lower than 25 doesn't mean that whatever you have in your grow at 20% isn't working. Look at your plants. If they're happy, then they're happy, and you're probably doing pretty well. And that's my biggest piece of advice on that matter.
Here you go, Lance.
I would say two things that I still carried over. One is beneficial foliars. I've always seen a really good. I use beneficial foliars. I've gone through a bunch of them. I really like Heavy 16. I've had really good luck with that. I also use, if you want to talk old school, I still will do Bill's Perfect 3-part formula. Some of the old OGs around me always were like the 3-part, and you got to wait 15 minutes before putting the third part in, and there's got to be a color change. And that shit, we would spray that, and man, I just feel like, yo, look at the health on these plants. And so something I've always kept with was beneficial foliars. I'm big on that. Some people don't like foliaring. I'm big on foliar feeds. Something else I've always brought with me was Sea of Green. I've always seen really good success with me when I think Sea of Green. A lot of people don't do it, but that's something that the guys before me taught me, and it's always been in every single grow I do. I figure out a Sea of Green method with everything I grow.
I was a shit ass grower back in the day. No, I'm just kidding. The one thing I can say is put the time in and keep things clean, no matter what it is. If anyone here's been to my grow, super clean. Start with that. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but if it ain't clean, I'm not even thinking right. So I'd say stay clean. It prevents a lot of things. It means someone's in there doing something, so that's a good start. And then what was the last question?
What's something you carried over
from
early days?
Yeah, just putting in the time and staying clean, man. I love cleanliness is next to godliness. You walk in my facility, that's what we preach, and that'll prevent a lot of things right there.
Consistency. Stay consistent.
Mine would be calcium. So I've always inputted a lot of calcium from the days, compost tea days, foliar. It's how most of the time I insert it in. And so I've kept that regimen for 20 years pretty much. Is just always have a calcium foliar. And then anytime I have the ability to put it in, into the root zone additional, or any organics, I'm putting in calcium.
How many foliars are you doing, Kevin?
I do 2 beneficials and 1 IPM a week. And both of those beneficials included calcium.
Calcium always. Yes, 100%.
No mag, just more cal.
Just more cal. Cal, no mag. So we got time for one more question. You guys have been extremely patient. Thank you. This is an awesome lineup up here, guys. We can rant all day long, but I want to be respectful. The Connect's about networking, communicating, leveling up together. So let's get one more question, and then we're going to wrap up the panel.
Hey guys, Pete with Arroya. I'm just curious, we've come a long way from pin and mechanical timers. What technology or what new techniques are you guys most excited about? Thank you.
I guess for me, it's lighting. It's going to be lighting for a long time. There's a lot to play around with there. Excuse me, with mixed light and then tunable mixed light, tunable under canopy. Who knows what's next?
Yeah.
Dissolved auction.
Yeah, I mean, for us personally, it's lighting as well. The under canopies have been a game changer. I firmly believe if you're an indoor grower and you're not using under canopies, that's going to be one of the things that pushes you out over the long term. We're at a point right now where margins keep slipping. I can tell you for our grow year over year, not having under canopies to having them, we went up 38% year over year with yield. So, when we start to talk about cost to produce and everything, obviously we all know you got your overhead and that's divided by the amount of pounds you're growing, right? So if we can produce them for 400 and the next guy's doing them at 500 and we get down to those tight margins and everything, certain people are just going to be forced out. So definitely lighting as well. Yep.
Honestly, huge thanks to Dylan over here and his partner Jay putting me on the mixed lighting and the far reds. That was a big thing for us. I'm gonna give them their flowers on that one. That was who I copied on that one. Beyond that, it's been the dissolved oxygen. That's been the biggest thing overnight that I've seen change every single plant that I have in the building's health for the better. That's been my big focus. So yeah, those two things, technology-wise, have been huge increases for me, and I think for anyone who's tried them.
New technology. For me, it's I just put down money on hiring personal tissue culture. So I'm hiring Mike Hydro. I have him coming through in October and teaching me and LA Family Farms at the same time tissue culture, since I'm working with him. I don't have a rec grow, but I still produce genetics, and I still have an 18 lighter that I breed in and play with. So for me, it's tissue culture, diving into that. I've lost so many genetics over the years. I'm not a build out guy. I'm the guy who's going to tell you about the strains and smokability and show you that there's two different types of growers, and I always say this, and they rarely cross over. And it's the guy who you're going to talk to, and he's going to talk about the lighting, the AC, the build out, and the specs on the room. And there's the other type that's going to come in and be like, bro, this is the dirty Sprite, bro. We found this from seed. You know what I'm saying? And then they're like, oh yeah, the AC, the lights, yeah, mixed light, but yeah, tissue culture, man. We've lost so many good genetics over the amount of time, and I've just lost stuff. I've lost stuff a month ago that I was like, fuck, again. And talking to some of these tissue culture guys, and I've heard all these myths about the issues it causes and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, we'll find out. I'm interested to try it out myself. And then to be able to have a closet in your house with 1,500 strains or 1,000, one 12 by 12 bedroom, the normal size, and I got my 1,500 strains or 1,000 strains, even 500, and to know like everything's backed up. I'll never lose that again. And when I want to breed DJ Shorts Flow with their Presidential Kush, which I just lost, Dirty Sprite, all these strains that we've hunted over the years, and then put all this time and effort into marketing and really believing in, almost like a prospect, right? Like they're going to college. This guy's going to be going to the NFL. And we do all this work to just keep, I'm talking to Sky, one of the guys that I've met out here. It's been an absolute pleasure from Exotic Matter. And he's like, yeah, currently I'm at about 200 moms, 200 strains. And I'm like, black market? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, we're talking about electric bills. I said, bro, I've been there. $2,000 a month electric bill just for moms that you don't even run, that are just like, oh, maybe in a couple years I'll run that one. And so for me, it's tissue culture. I think that's the next level of us making sure, because every hustler in here, no matter who sits across from me at my table at first smoke of the day, I don't care if it's a rapper, I don't care if it's a hash maker, grower, no matter who you're talking to, the end of the line combo we're really talking about is genetics. That's all we're talking about. Every single time we joke and we're like, genetics, and we're losing them. And we're in this cycle of loss that we're not fixing. I hear people, oh, I got the form still. I'm like, dude, please hold it down. But it's only a matter of time till he has a hiccup. And so, yeah, for me, it's tissue culture and locking down your genetics and holding things, because as we've seen, we have 10-year cycles. 12 to 15 years from now, we'll be like, dude, remember the candy, bro? Like, fuck, that would be fire to have that bubblegum. And everyone will be like, yeah, we got rid of that shit. And so it's this same cycle that we got to get through. And the only way to do that is back up the genetics, move forward, because all these guys on here have way too many strains in their grow. I guarantee it.
Lance, candy ain't going nowhere. It's going to be here in 12 years. No, I think at Hytek, at least, we're really dedicating some space and time to pheno hunting. So similar to what Lance is saying, we want to find new flavors for everyone to smoke and enjoy. As you know, a lot of us up here are production farming at the end of the day. That's what we're doing. Well, you got to get new flavors. We can't just keep running, the Sherb cream pies. Dylan's done a great job with Jay over there at Bean Fiends, bringing some new genetics to the market. I think that's something that we really want to work on as well. Those dudes have been crushing it. I think, some of the most relevant, breeding to be done here in a moment. And then on top of that, what are we excited about? I think, these guys will eventually get me to go to some mixed lighting and come off the HPS train. So that'll be the two things we work on.
The high-tech runs ain't going nowhere, baby. Go, Kev.
Well, I said earlier, I said dissolved oxygen, and so I would stand by that as far as kind of for me. I do like to put organics in and microbes. So I think maybe a couple years down the road, we're going to figure out you can almost steer with different microbes and control different pathogens and things like that, depending on your DO. So that's kind of where we have a brainchild that's just, we would like to go that direction and see, okay, trichoderma is killed at this DO, Bacillus subtilis is at this, and so where do you get this sweet at this age of your plant? And they're going to convert phosphorus and things like that. So I think it's going to be fun, and it's more of, what's the result? We'll find out, but I think it's kind of cool in a biological sense to figure that out. And I don't think anybody's doing it, so that's even cooler.
Being an R&D company, we get exposure to a lot of solutions, right? Not a lot of them work, but that's the fun part. We get to figure out what actually might work. And I actually have one question. Thank you for that question back there. We've got a lot of manufacturer partners in this room, and I know that it's really cool to have you guys here with us. Is there any questions from any of our manufacturing partners that you want to ask the panelists up here? Because I know you're always looking for deeper solutions. How do you separate yourself out in the marketplace as a manufacturer? What are you doing? What do you need to know from this crew, this elite crew of cultivators, to help you drive your business to bring more solutions so you stay relevant in the future?
I have a really yo. Yeah, I think we need to innovate in clone scissor space. We have not seen cloning scissors or scissors for trimming innovate. It's like, oh, they're sharper. I'm like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, you got to buy the Japanese ones. And then I'm like, these suck too. And so it's just like every pair of scissors, I have a basket of like 100 pairs of scissors, and I don't even have that big of a grow. And I'm like, if you ask me which one I like, I'd be like, none of them. And so like, I just think that space is somewhere where we look at the product shelves, and we've seen so much innovation in so many places. And then some were like, yeah, it's the same pair from 1927. And you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I'll buy them for $30. And so I just don't see it. Like, I have some good ideas for cloning scissors, but I just see such a gap. As I walk around here, I talk to a lot of old, angry growers, right? Who are like, this shit left me behind. I didn't make the money I thought I would, whatever. And I'm like, you have so much knowledge in this area. If you literally just walk the aisles of a grow store and then figure out a play where you can actually take on a loan and build, there is so much opportunity in this space selling picks and axes to farmers. If you don't want to farm anymore, man, you can innovate in this space. There's just so many gaps. I really see it.
Did we have a question over here from Kaya's booth?
Good evening, guys. Mike with United Nutrients. So just a quick question in regards to like going back to like cloning wise. So as you guys touched up a little bit about that, where finding good cuts is hard. So can you guys share a little bit like tips and tricks for people that can't get the most premium cuts or the best cuts? What would be like a small trick you guys can do to kind of enhance what they have, like using biostimulants, or how you play with your nutrients, or use different media? What can you guys give some advice just to like maybe someone starting or just overall?
I mean, if you're trying to get the most out of any cut, the one thing I'll say is just dry back. Dry your plants back. They seem to like that a lot, no matter what it is. A lot of the old school genetics especially don't like their wet feet. I guess if I had to give 1 point, it'd be dry back.
That's such a tough one, because I'd be like, genetics, spend your money on genetics. Like, to take that off the table, I'm like, oh, hell. Like, you just took my king or my, one of my crown pieces, and like, yeah, we all threw a bag seed in the ground and we're like, let's grow some Reggie and see if it turns into Crippy. But like, I just think, man, genetics is such an important part, and it's overlooked by all these MSOs, man. All these guys come in with all this money, and you're like, wow, what a beautiful grow. And how are you going to get 180 light room to perform with perpetual harvest? This will be interesting. And then you go, what are you guys growing? And they're like, oh, wedding cake. And you're like, this year? And it's just like, you just start to realize where these gaps are, and you go like, man, you should have spent half this money on genetics, because the rest of this, throw some HBSs up, you'll still have good success. It's that genetics, man, we see it in people. Who do you think's in the Olympics? And who survival of the fittest is the oldest test of time. You go in nature and you go, yep, it's true here too. And it's the same thing with breeding people. It's the same. And I know people get weird about that, but it's the same thing. And so when you try to take that off the table, you're missing the key factor. And it's the same thing. Rappers, they want their own strain. They want this, they want you're talking genetics. It's a hash maker, and he wants 12%. And he want, you know what I'm saying? And he wants, I want terpenes. Yeah, that's genetics. and we'll get there. But it's going to take breeders, and it's going to take guys preserving old genetics it's so hard to take that off the table is what I'm saying, man. It really is. That's the key factor to almost all this.
Yeah, some genetics just suck. You can't really pretty them up, no matter how good you grow them. Dry back's about the only thing, like Bill said. You run a good dry cycle, a good wet dry cycle, you'll get the best out of that plant. Keep it simple. I wouldn't try to overdo things, especially with something that's not overly terpy. If you light it up too much, feed it too hot, you're going to burn out any little bit that it might have. So...
Yeah, for us, in regards to cuts, we're big believers of just trying to make sure we're constantly training those canopies still, trying to keep auxin production even, trying to make sure, again, all those caliper sizes match up with one another. To touch on the genetics thing, I think it's a great point, and I think, we've talked about this a lot, Dylan and I, because he hunts a lot of seeds, I hunt a lot of seeds. It's costly to do so, especially in this market where, packs can go as low as $600 for indoor packs, just depending who you are and whatnot. It's it's very costly to turn lights on and run air conditioners just so you can run 200-300 seeds and maybe find one or two keepers, So I think that's where some of the disconnect comes, and where you're going to see over the course of time the people that are kind of playing the long game with this thing, with their genetics, and that's going to be the real IP long term. I think we're all learning from each other and learning how to grow, and we've got better techniques than we ever have, and we're going to continue to evolve in that regard. But I've had a lot of people that'll hit me in the DMs and want to buy our cuts, as I'm sure everybody up on this panel has, and everybody wants the easy route, and I think if you're in this thing for the long haul, that genetics are huge and you've got to start hunting.
For cloning, I think it kind of comes down to treat your plant moms how you treat your own mom, and make sure that she's taken care of. They're all taken care of really well. Plant health and immunity is good. So, part of that's the dry backs. Make sure you're keeping fusarium and things out of there. And, if you have a lot of moms different sizes, put some preventatives in there, some trichoderma, things like that are going to help that, that variable factor you have in all your moms, so, and then sanitation, if you're taking clones, sanitation is like absolute number one. So whatever you can do, different scissors for different moms, track your moms from cutting to all the way to harvest. So you can see that progression of the pathogen that's coming in there. But sanitation is absolutely number one. We're going to lose genetics, and that's how we've lost a lot of them, is because of, HLV. So, you can't clone without being sanitation.
Having operated a commercial nursery for over 5 years, mother plant health and clean practices, clean behaviors is the culture inside the farm. Whatever you're touching, treat it like raw chicken, right? If you're touching one plant, then you have to sanitize in between. We have individual plant shears for every single mom. We only kept their moms for 3 months. They're all coming out of Gen 0 TC. So there was that strict regimen. Every single mom was treated like a queen, just like you said, Kevin. You got to be clean with your mothers and having practices in place where you're not spreading any contaminants, having proper sterilization protocol, whether it's 3% bleach, or 10% bleach for a 30 to 60 second soak in agitation, or 1 to 2% Virkon. You got to use a viricide. You got to use these oxidizers to ensure that you're getting rid of a pathogen, right? Hopslatin is crippling a lot of farms. Right, so just being able to maintain your plant health ultimately is going to lead to 95% plus rooting health. So, great question, guys. But I just want to say there's one more over here, Matt.
Check. Okay, my name is Matt. I'm with a lot of different things. All right, so there's a lot of failing businesses out here right now, right? A lot of grows that are just sinking ships, especially in Michigan, a lot of these little guys. Pretend that you guys aren't in the grow that you're in right now and in the situation you're in. You're walking into a sinking ship. What's the first thing you're changing on day one?
Great question.
Let me start. Under canopy. That's what I would say if you have the ability, because it's going to be the easiest way to increase your yield and get your ROI back. That's like the first thing I'd do if you have the ability to do it.
I'd say ownership. It's going down because the guy's at the top. But for real, Under canopy would be a good one, and I'm sure that place is filthy. Let's get it cleaned up and start with square one and see who's there to work and who's there to play around.
I mean, the first thing I do, and I took over a cultivation out in Desert Hot Springs that was being run poorly, and it was a beautiful facility. It's 120 in bloom, 260 light rooms, and they were hand watering, and two guys would start at 8 a.m. and finish at 8 p.m. And I was like, this is madness. Like, I used to joke with the guy. I'd be like, you ready? Hold on. You ready? Right? I'm watering the whole room. Hold on. You ready? Hold on. You want me to stop? Hold on. I stopped. It's done. And I said, that's how easy it would be. Hold on. Let me do it again. You ready? Hold on. It's watering. And I would joke with him like, that's how easy versus these guys are ready to quit at the end of the day after, because they got to come in on Saturdays and Sundays too, or someone does, right? Because we're watering. And so I just think you have to take a full assessment of the facility, right? Even like this, the facility I took over had like 15 to 25 foot gap between the lights and then the top of the ceiling. And I was like, is there any way we can drop this ceiling or put a false ceiling in? We're having to cover so much overhead above the lights. So I'm having to aim fans up to keep microclimate galore. And so this grower's been up against it. So for me, it's just about assessment of the full facility. And then also the guys working it. Like, are they happy? You happy? Hey man, what's up, bro? How are you? And just getting a full, like you would as a consultant, because that's basically how I come to it and say, what do I think about this? Is it the way they're watering? Is it the genetics? Is it the dry? Most of the time it's dehumidification. Most people, like almost every garden, undershoots their dehumidification because we've been told that. When we did build outs 10 years ago, people were like, you're only going to need this much. And for so many people, it was not enough. And so now you're putting them under the trays, or you're putting them in the corners, and you're rebuilding a build out. And so for me, it's just about full assessment. It's not just one thing. It rarely is.
I couldn't agree more with Lance's assessment on that. It's a full building comb through. You have to figure out everything that could be going wrong. Are your lights properly spaced? Are you feeding the right amount? Do you have pathogen pressure? Do you have pest pressure? I think I personally walked into a grow with all of those things, and so that was something that was tough for me. So like the initial thing that I hit was pest pressure. I hit Nick with Plantsman, rolled out a full beneficial insect program, and that knocked that out. So I could literally eliminate that thought from my mind, and then I was able to focus on, okay, cool, what's next? Okay, we got pathogen pressures here. I talked to Tassa at Toomey. I figure out what is the problem? What do I need to do to fix this? I implement that and get that next. Okay, cool. Now I move on to my next thing. All right, we have a little bit too much nitrogen. Why do we have too much nitrogen? It's because my plant spacing is too dense, and they're recycling and creating the wrong type of nitrogen, and then I'm getting that curl. So I spread my plants out a little bit more. I get a better result from that. It's every single thing that you could possibly imagine that you have to evaluate and you have to fix. And that's it.
Yeah, I think, when you're going into those situations, a lot of times, unfortunately, the budget is not always on your side, right? So you want to add under canopies, or you want to do mixed light, or you want to do all these things. But, these businesses, they're what you said, they're sinking, right? So I guess I look at things right away from like a cost standpoint, usually cost of labor right away. Is everybody in here? Do they have a job? Are they doing something all the time? I think especially with the scale of some of these grows, people can kind of blend in and get lost in the space. And you're like, hey, where's this guy? And he's like kind of floating around somewhere. And, so just making sure from a labor standpoint, everybody's got a purpose on that ship. And then also just from like a practices and a streamlined standpoint, for us, we like going with rock wool for various reasons. It's clean. We're not wasting time vacuuming trays all the time because all the cocoa's all over. Our transplants are super easy. I'm taking a 4x4 block. I'm setting it on a 3x6x36 slab. It's done, right? Versus like doing it the old tech with 3 or 5 gallon cocoa pots that you're busting out the loose cocoa. Or even if you're doing the quick fills, you're still probably busting up that top 2 inches of cocoa. Like, there's just more touch points here. So just trying to find where you can start to cut some of that cost. And then obviously genetics. We've talked about that, again, budget might not always be in the cards for you with that, but we all see there's plenty of weed out here. right? There's no shortage of weed. So you really got to have something that stands out in this market. And I think if you're going to spend money, the best money you can spend is either on under canopies, as Kevin said, or genetics.
Yeah, I would say I've taken over a few places that need a lot of work. First and foremost, I got to have a good environment to be able to grow fire, regardless of what kind of lights I have, what kind of under canopies, if I have them. And if I'm trying to put out fireweed, I got to have an environment that's stable. So that's probably what I'm going to look at first, is my environment. Check for that. Yeah, if you got a CO2 burner, rip it out, throw it away in the trash. Environment's number one for sure. After that, I'm looking at my labor force, and I'm seeing, like Seth alluded to, I'm seeing, do we have enough people? Do we have too many people? Where are we at? But environment's number one. And then once I start making a profit, I'll add to. That's usually where I start. And based on my experience, even walking into a spot that like looks okay from the outside, I'm like, okay, I can probably, get a decent batch down in here. And I start to get in that room. I'm like, dude, I need ducting put in. I'm calling my AC guy. I need another DHU just to get through a round. So that's probably where I would start, so we can actually make something profitable to sell, or good to sell, make a profit.
All extremely valid points, and it's a facility competency walkthrough first, right? How much power, how much DHU, how many people are working here, right? And then you're just going from there and modifying, as you guys have all pointed out, exactly to the T. So, I mean, there's so many things. Every facility is unique, and they're always going to be something that you can improve upon. But yeah, I think the overwhelming value add is under canopy. You add more light and you increase the plant health, you're going to get more value. So our goal as cultivators, commercial cultivators, earnings per light. How do we maximize the earnings per light? Again, while chasing quality. We're chasing quality and not the yield. So again, facility competence, lowering plant count when you don't have enough DHU. Less plants sometimes more likely does have more yield. So just playing around with the planting density. And Justin, I appreciate the tour yesterday because you were really getting that dialed in. What was the formula that you talked about?
Yeah. So I created what I call the plant density coefficient. It's simple. It's how many square feet each plant has. That's the simple number to it. I walked into a facility that has different sized benches. I've got 4-footers, I've got 5-footers. They're 34 feet in length. They're 26 feet in length, all over the place. So when I have a team that is deciding how much to clone, how much to plant, and how much to move down into that flower room, I need them to have an exact number of how many plants that is, and that is based on per genetic. So I took a simple measurement. I have this many square feet per table. I divide it by the number of plants that I have, and then I get that plant density coefficient from that. So my sex tape is at a 2.6, where my pink passion's at a 2.9, where my blue runts is at a 2.4. And that's how my team knows exactly what to clone, exactly what to move down, and everything beyond that. And it's just, there's no questions about it. They know what it is based on what I've developed, and we move forward from there.
I just got to say, huge shout out to Michigan. The engagement from this audience has been second to none. This reminds me of the Sacramento days. Please, round of applause for every single person in here. This is what the Connect is about. This is the level up. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Big shout out to the Hydro Depot for hosting us. Love you guys. Thank you for the hospitality. Really appreciate everybody coming out. The Connect will be back into Michigan hopefully soon. And much love, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hell yeah, guys. That was dope. Michigan Connect, thank you guys so much for coming through tonight. Big shout out to the Hydro Depot.
This was amazing. This really reminded me of the early Sacramento Connect days. The vibe here, the culture, outstanding. There's so many incredible people. Great discussion. I mean, this is one of the all-time discussions that we've had out here. Big shout out to all of our panelists for being up here, sharing their game, their experience, their perspective. Michigan market is incredible. I cannot wait to come back here. This is absolutely living the culture of cannabis. We'll see you guys next time. Much love.